Just because it's unidentified doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial. It just means it's unidentified. We don't know what it is. So I start asking the entity, do you need some water? Like, you okay? And it never stopped. It was kind of like a guard at the London Palace, had a mission, and it was the most loving and peaceful feeling you could imagine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Watch Mojo and the Unveiled podcast. I'm your host, Rob, and today my guest is Sarah Gamm. She is an intelligence analyst with a background in astrophysics, and she is formerly a member of the Department of Defense's UAP task force, which aimed to detect, analyze, and catalog UAPs. And she joins me today to talk about her experience with that and to explore the many complexities of the UAP phenomenon. Sarah, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's good to meet you and good to be here.
Let's get started with a little bit of background on yourself. I'm interested that you have an education in astrophysics, which is awesome to start with. But how did you get from there to interested in UAPs, and how did you end up on this task force?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of all tied together, right? You look up to look at the stars, and you also look up to see UAPs. So the love for them started at a young age. I grew up on a farm in Missouri, so middle of nowhere. It's sky country, God's land. So and here's Krypton already. So he's making an early appearance
Welcome,
tonight.
Krypton. Nice to have you too.
Yeah. So I ended up just falling in love with the stars at a young age. And then it just kind of progressed to that of watching sci-fi and X-Files and really enjoying all the things out there because I also grew up religious. So luckily my family embraced all my weirdness. I read all the R.L. Stein books when I was little and loved all the vampire and the cryptid things and then all the UFO stuff. So I fell in love with X Files, though, is where the story's going. And I fully embraced Mulder, but then the science side of me really, I felt like I was both worlds, Mulder and Scully. So that's kind of where the drive started in my adult life is the foundation of loving looking up and then X Files and always having an open mind.
So, very general question about the task force. What was your biggest takeaway after, completing your time with it?
Biggest takeaway, how important collaboration is. I've always known that. I've had other jobs prior to that where I actually worked in a place called the Joint Collaboration Cell that unfortunately no longer exists anymore. It closed because it did its job and it taught people how to collaborate in the intelligence community. And so it was really important to talk to so many people and not hesitate to ask questions. And also, you have to have thick skin because some people might laugh at what you're doing, especially, nowadays it's more common to talk about it. But like back in 2019 and 2020, when I was on supporting the task force from NGA, it was not as common of a thing. And so you had to have thick skin and be persistent, which luckily I have all of that. I'm a very independent person. So, yeah, biggest takeaway though, I would say is the amazing collaboration that was done between task force members and others who supported and helped the diverse group that we had.
Were there any moments where task force members disagreed on certain findings or conclusions about evidence that you guys observed?
No, absolutely, for sure. I mean, we're all humans, right? We're not going to have the same standpoint and the same views or the same opinions. And so, whenever there was a case that was researched for many months, and there was evidence showing it was, I'll say A. It was A, which was science-based evidence, and then B, which was unknown. And so it was literally 50-50 split down the middle on what it was. So because it was so strong, we had to label it as an unidentified, but with the caveat, this is also what it could be. So, yeah, there was definitely disagreements, but we were all, respectful of each other with it too, which was really great.
What's the most compelling evidence that is out in the public for UAPs? Let's say for the skeptic. What would you point them to as the most compelling evidence that UAPs are a real thing?
Yeah, I'm laughing because there is evidence out there and people don't like it, what they see, and they want more. So I'm laughing because like what is out there I think is amazing. Like Jake Barber's egg aircraft, recovery aircraft. That's incredible. Oh, and people are unhappy with it. And then there's a new video that came out from Navy Liberation Times put it out like last week, I think, or within the past couple weeks. That was also really good. And people are also upset about it. Like that's not in 4K or whatever. So I don't know how to answer that because no matter what, I don't think people are going to be happy. But there's so much out there right now that is, declassified, like the Nimitz, the Tic Tac, and folks are still discounting things, especially from military leaders that have reported this as well. So they're discounting eyewitness experience and coverage, like the video coverage. So I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that other than no one's happy no matter what.
You think that nobody, people who don't want to be satisfied just won't be satisfied no matter what? Is that the kind of the conclusion?
I from my so for those that also don't know, I am a psychic medium as well. So from my spiritual route that I've taken over the past, I don't even know, 7-ish years of my life. So it's been fairly recent. Um, like your ego protects you and will always make you believe like confirmation bias. So your confirmation bias will kick into high gear saying, well, no, like the Nimitz is a balloon. I'm making this up right now, but like the Tic Tac is a balloon. And so you keep making things up to confirm your bias that it is a balloon instead of looking at the actual evidence and listening to the testimonies that were before Congress. So I think it's a matter of either protecting the ego or confirmation bias, which really boils down to it's hard concepts to what's the right word, like a hard pill to swallow, I guess,
Hmm.
or something hard to grasp for our human minds. Everything about UAPs is difficult from knowing we're not alone, and so if you were raised in a way to not believe that's hard.
I definitely want to dig deeper into your life as a psychic medium. I find it fascinating. It's quite a contrast between the scientific and then this, more intuitive side. How do you balance that? How have you balanced that in your life and in your career, the balance between focusing on intelligence and data and intuition?
Yeah, I actually keep them in two separate buckets because if I operated in both worlds at all times, I would be exhausted because it does take a lot of energy to operate on the spiritual world side of things. But my intuition's always there, and I learned before my spiritual journey to listen to my intuition. So it I do tend to keep things separate, but every once in a while there'll be something that'll pop up in my mind where I'm like, oh, that wasn't my idea. That was something like spiritual. And I'll go down that path. So it'll be like that hunch feeling or something that you get sometimes. So that's sometimes that little nickel in the back of your mind. And then every once in a while I'll actually have like a spiritual encounter while I'm at work. So I worked at the Pentagon not quite a year. I left earlier this year for a new job, but some spiritual things like ghost encounter type situations would happen at my desk, and stuff like a headset to the phone would fall off the wall, and it would be my coworkers would be around and it would just all of a sudden fall off the wall, and I would let them know like, no, I'm off the clock. I have a hard boundary. I'm not talking to you right now. And then I discovered I sat not too far from the corridor where the plane hit. So I was like, oh, this makes sense. They probably just wanted to say hello. And so I approached them later, like when I was done working for one day, and let them have some words of peace. And yeah, so like some things like that happen once in a while, but I don't expect them and I don't welcome things in like that.
How did that side of your life all start for you? Was that from a young age that you were, having these encounters, or did it start later on?
I'll call it ghost encounters happened when I was young. I was, I think 12, 11 or 12. I don't know what grade like middle school is, sixth or seventh grade. And that progressed to even in high school. I had some encounters. College, more ghost encounters. I started having what is called vivid dreams of loved ones. In that progress, I had a near death experience that happened. I'm getting ready to have my 13-year anniversary of my alive day in a few weeks. So it's super, super exciting. I celebrate the day every year. But from the near death experience, after that, a lot of common stories are you have abilities that develop after them, or you have knowings of things, or a geographer could all of a sudden do advanced physics and quantum physics, like so your brain's kind of switched on to something else. And what happened to me was I started having more psychic things happen in my life that was too for me, and then it started happening to other people to where I would sense something from friends, and so that ended up developing to other people's loved ones would come to me, and I started freaking out and I didn't know what was happening to me. And so that's how it all unraveled.
Could you describe the near-death experience a little bit? What was it like? What was the experience itself like?
It was the most loving and peaceful feeling you could imagine, and then what you can imagine, amplify it 100, 200 times more. It was nothing but love and peace all around you. I usually start tearing up talking about it because I feel that same feeling again. And I tell people like my body can only handle so much of the feeling, so it leaks out in tears, but it's just the most amount of love you could imagine. And my loved ones were around me. I knew my grandparents were there, father figure that I honestly had kind of forgotten he'd passed away. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, hi, there you are. And it was amazing. I didn't want to come back and I argued about it and I lost that argument.
Hearing that, I'm reminded of what Jake Barber said about approaching the craft that he was going to recover and feeling a feeling of just immense love coming from it, so overwhelming that he started to tear up and wasn't sure if he'd be able to continue operating his helicopter. Sounds very similar to what you just described. And I'm wondering, do you think that that experience has changed the way that you regard UAPs in any capacity?
That's a good question. I don't think it's changed how I view them because I've always, my entire life, I've just known we're not alone. And going through undergrad and my astrophysics classes, people would ask, what do you think about aliens? And like, why would we be selfish enough to think we're the only ones in infinite amount of space, infinite and expanding amount of space? So I don't think it changed my viewpoint at all, other than maybe just more of a knowing that that feeling and what I had told people was actually true.
Is that a common sentiment from, people on the task force that they all kind of believed that we're not alone and that, there is uh, possibility that, other races of beings could be visiting Earth or maybe probably are visiting Earth? Was that like what was the attitude like? I'm wondering.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I wasn't a part of the larger task force, so I didn't meet the higher ups or anything like that. So my viewpoint is from a very limited scope, like a small corner of it. But from the people that I know, and then I also supported like a collaboration space as well, and was an active member of that. So from those two perspectives of those viewpoints, I guess, I perspective viewpoint. I just said the same thing, but um, it was diverse. Like some people were strictly data, and we also didn't really talk about aliens either. So that was I just looked at videos and of imagery and stuck to the data points. So um, others that would start talking about more aliens and that kind of stuff, uh, we would discuss it in like a sidebar, side chat type thing, but it wasn't an official part of like the task force or that kind of stuff. But it varied. So there were still very strict scientific people there that would look at the data and would give you like, a nerd would. Like what I've done sometimes is just like, here, this points to tank, and here's this. I don't know what it means. And so then it would go to somebody else who knew how to interpret it. So that's a long story for it was diverse and everybody had different opinions on what you asked about.
Do you feel that there was ever any evidence that was not made public but probably should have been? Like there was no reason to keep it classified?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why I do talks and I came forward is to let people know that there is more out there. And some of it, I don't understand why it couldn't be declassified, but I am not the classification person to decide that. I have no authority whatsoever.
Did you ever feel any institutional pressures to reach certain conclusions going one way or another?
I never did. I guess I was maybe lucky if some others had that happen to them, but I never felt pressure one way or the other. But I mean, we would really thoroughly go through all the different things that something could be. It wasn't just you would jump to this is unidentified or this is trash or whatever. So we would go through a lot of, scientific process and think about can it be duplicated and also take into account the eyewitness testimonies and a pilot behind the aircraft, what he saw, what he felt. So emotion also, we learned a long time ago, emotion plays into some of these encounters. Um, and I've also been able to, be a part of a team where you interviewed, um, you know, maybe how systems were put together and assembled, and if parts could have become loose or something. So, yeah, nothing was really jumped to a conclusion. We really did go through scientific process, looked at weather data, of course, and even you got different sources for weather data instead of just one. So I hope that people do know like what is being done, behind the scenes, behind classified walls is actually being thorough. But of course, that's for task force. I can't speak to Arrow.
Right. So Arrow is the basically the follow up to the task force, right? That was the group that took over. And my understanding is that a lot of people were not very happy with the findings that they put forward. Can you address that a little bit?
I don't. I'm happy to address. I don't like to like talk bad about people, but I don't understand why lies were done and said and still are. That's really frustrating, especially from a standpoint of knowing there are reports out there that were published says that this is unidentified. And just because it's unidentified doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial. It just means it's unidentified. We don't know what it is. And then a few years later, we actually identified something that was labeled unidentified. It turned out to be a weather balloon. So we go back and update the database. It's scientific driven, right? So
Mhm.
I don't understand why lies were done. And even sometimes in like the historical parts of the report, weren't too accurate. I really don't know answers on why, other than there has to be a driver from higher up above those people.
Right. And so the first report was kind of debunking, any claims that were made by your group. But then there was a second edition of Arrow that is now, I think, currently in place, which seems to have a little more promise. Is there anything that you think that we might be able to expect from them?
I have really high hopes from them and the new leadership and new guidance. I have heard um, positive and negative on what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm just a hopeful, optimistic person. So I believe that they will release truth and documents, and they also aren't classification. What's the right word? I'm trying to think of the right phrase, like classification. I'm so sorry. I hiccup once in a while. Originators or declassification authoritative people.
Mhm.
That those are both not the right phrases. I'm really sorry, but I'm hopeful.
Fair enough. Have you ever seen any reports or data or footage that left you with way more questions than answers?
Yes, absolutely. Um, some things just don't make sense, and then you think it's a balloon, and then I somebody like with an eyewitness encounter says otherwise, and then sometimes it's like, okay, you've looked at this enough, and now it has to move on to somebody else, or yes, that was a frustrating thing, or whether like the report doesn't match the video, because the video, as everybody is frustrated with video quality, we are frustrated with that too, but in classified channels. And so sometimes the video quality, you're like, how did you make that conclusion from that video that's super pixelated? Or there's like, thermal shadowing, and there's other kinds of artifacts maybe. But that might only be one sensor for the data that I got to see, because I again was like supporting it from a small corner. So I might not have had the full picture to begin with.
Um, did you witness any reports of phenomena that interacted seemingly with human consciousness?
I didn't. So we kept it to just video and imagery on my side of things.
Okay. Did any of the data that you examined hint at patterns of behavior, or was it all kind of isolated incidents?
So we did, of course, look for patterns of behavior. We know, for many decades now, there's reports of UAP seen over nuclear sites. So we you look for those type of patterns, or we looked for altitude patterns. And so yeah, so I mean, as a scientific method, you want to see if there is a pattern, or if a country is escalating and potentially going to battle or to attack something, to see if there's something out there as well. So like we would know to watch news channels, news networks in the area when something would be going on, to see if that was a pattern as well, if they show up.
We've been throwing around this term now, non-human intelligence, for a little while. In your estimation, do you think that we're dealing with a single intelligence responsible for this phenomenon, or is it a case of multiple intelligences?
I like giving the analogy to people. Think of how diverse we are here on Earth. I mean, I live just outside of Washington, D.C. Just in this area alone, there are so many diverse humans here, and it is so beautiful. Think of that, but in infinite amount of space. It's infinite. So how can there not be this diverse community and world out there?
For sure. What's the most overhyped UAP theory that you think is circulating right now?
Oh man, I honestly don't even know. And sometimes I take a break from all the things because, I have a personal life. And so sometimes I don't even pay attention to the news. I really don't know how to answer that and what that would be. That's a fun question. I'm going to continue to think about that and like maybe try to come up with something in a little bit.
Sure, we'll come back to it. Did you ever feel at any time like information was out there that was being withheld from you guys, that you didn't have the full picture?
I wasn't read into any programs, so yes, I mean, stuff
Mhm.
could have been withheld for good reason, and I'm happy that I wasn't read into anything, because I've learned ignorance is bliss, and I don't need to know things. So yeah, absolutely, but it wasn't. Some of them I think were intentional, and some of them might have been because they needed a blind test to see, what I was a research scientist at the time. So they wanted to see like what I saw versus an analyst that was looking at the area, that knows a lot of intimate details of the place where a UAP might have been seen over. So I get withholding some information sometimes just to see what a scientist might observe. But yeah, I wasn't read into any programs.
I got to ask you about a bit of a news item that I came across today. So, somebody from the Trump administration went on the record saying that American tech can, quote, manipulate time and space, which is an odd choice of words, to be sure. But, it kind of fits right into this theme of UAP and how they do what they do, seemingly, defying the laws of physics as we know them. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean,
My first thought would be, is this an indicator of disclosure coming? Like, are they actually going to say something? And I got a little excited, but there has been more. There was a study recently. within the past couple of weeks about quantum physics and proving that time isn't real, that we actually invented real. So, the spiritual community, we've been saying for decades, over 100 years or something, that time isn't real. And now there's scientific data proving that. So I'm wondering if that is the case of they're referring to maybe something along that. But if they said we have technology, I don't know. I'm hopeful that maybe that's a little nugget of disclosure coming soon.
What do you think about the way that disclosure has been playing out over the past several years? We've kind of gotten a lot of information. Still, people seem to not be happy because it's a little bit of a drip feed. I think a lot of people just want the books wide open and everybody to know everything. But, I also spoke to Lou Elizondo recently, who, insists that catastrophic disclosure would be a disaster and that it has to be this way. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think as a whole, the past you said 7 years, we have come such a far way. So the fact that we're talking about this in an open way and not everybody is making fun of you now, oh my gosh, that's a huge leap. And then also to discuss spirituality and psionics as a part of this is an even bigger leap, which that's more of a recent thing, even though the spiritual community knows this thing has been married this whole time. But now it's out in the public, and it's been a beautiful thing to witness over the past, what did I join this, 2019, of seeing the dynamic change and the stigma start shedding. But as it's this weird balance, like as people talk more and more about disclosure, this like decrease happens with wanting more data. No matter what people see, we want more. And I get it. Everybody wants more, but we're talking about it. We're talking about wanting more. And how cool is that? I am disheartened a lot of times about what is happening with disclosure and disinformation, and people are like, a new fun phrase is grifters now, and I get it, but this is going to happen no matter what. The government, I truly believe the government won't be the ones to do it. It'll be us talking. It'll be, Ross Coulthart reporting on News Nation and doing the Lord's work. And I don't think it'll be government that's leading this. And they'll have to backtrack and they'll have to be like, yeah, whoopsie daisy. Yeah, we knew about that for well over 50 years. Um, but it is very disheartening a lot of times of making progress and then going backpedaling. But even that backpedaling, of course, this goes back to me being an optimistic person, but even those backpedals are still progress because we're still talking about it. And people are being active and trying to want to help. And, UAP Disclosure Fund is out there and different countries wanting to be involved now. UAP Ireland is wanting to, a foot in the game. And it's pretty cool to witness.
One of the things that makes it a little bit tough to discern what to believe is certain competing narratives. Some people insist that UAPs must be benevolent just due to the fact that they, have the, space travel capacity and that you can't develop that if you're like a violent and barbaric civilization. And then others say that this should be regarded as a potential threat because we don't know what they could do. Where do you personally stand on it? And do you think that these narratives are helping or hindering the disclosure process?
I guess from scientific standpoint, I think they're benevolent. I mean, they've been visiting for thousands of years. And yeah, from a pilot's perspective, when they're doing playful maneuvers, not cool, looks like a threat. When they're going over nuclear sites and powering down systems and powering back up, or what was I forget what book it was in, if it was in the one from the 60s, but it talked about actually like putting on the switch and the Soviets thinking we were getting ready to bomb them. um so that's a threat, that appears to be a threat, right? But they haven't done anything. That's the overall thing, is they've visited for thousands of years, and they haven't set off a nuclear warhead. They haven't, that we know of crashed into, a fighter plane. I mean, maybe something's happened and we just don't know about it. That could definitely be the case. But I do know, the Earth has a balance. There's good and bad has to exist. So I have encountered negative entities during my spiritual work. So I know there's malevolent NHI out there, but I think what we see for the most part are benevolent beings.
Do you have any theories about what the possible intent is of those NHI that we're witnessing with the UAP incidents?
Some of the intent, I think, is I've joked with people over the years. We're kind of like a petting zoo, and they pop in and check us out, and like, oh, did they kill the planet yet? Nope. All right, deuces. We're out now. We're out again. But the non-joking answer is I know from a spiritual aspect that they want what's best for Earth and trying to help get us back to a place of love and light where we operated back during Atlantis time during Atlantis. So they're here trying to help, but also not, go ahead and making the cake and giving us the cake and putting the candles on it and lighting the candles, but they might, give the baking dish and let us know like here's the dish, here's how you start it. Because I have heard stories of them us giving us some base technology on how to develop some things.
Let's dig a little deeper into the psychic medium side of things because I'm very fascinated by that. I listened to your interview with Ross Coulthard, and you went into detail about some entities that you encountered. Can you just, what is like what do you experience basically on a day-to-day basis, and how have you integrated that into your life?
It's really beautiful. So I love being able to see what I do and feel what I do, and it makes me feel loved and good, I guess. But then kind of sad because not everybody gets to see it. And um, so like earlier when we were starting, I have a lamp that I'm actually looking at right now, and it moved. And so I just smiled and I'm like, all right, so I know what's here around me is of love and light. And so like it doesn't scare me. Things happen. I've, had doors slam in my house, and I know what's there won't hurt me either because I'm more powerful than it. Um, Riding in my car going home, I have a best friend that passed away in 2017, and sometimes he changes my radio station to listen to a better song. And we argue. Like I argue with my dead best friend. And how fun is that? And I have a cat that's passed away. He passed away in December, and he's visited me a few times already, and I've had to lecture him. Like I cannot believe I am lecturing my cat that passed away to not visit right now and let me grieve and let me heal. And it's really cool. It's a neat perspective in life, and sometimes I second guess it because I am a scientist and I will always be a skeptic, but I have an open mind skeptic, and I do this with my own body, which everybody can. Like 100% of humans were born with abilities. So I incorporated, I guess I don't feel like I incorporate anything into my life because it's who I am now. At first, it was weird and I mind blowing. There were times where I would experience something or have a sudden vision while hiking and not know what to do with it and freak out. And now it's almost second nature to, I went to Egypt last year with, Ross Coulthard on that group. And I had past life experiences while I was in one of the pyramids. And that first time that happened to me, it freaked me out. And now it's like, oh, there's another life. That's cool. And I mean, of course, like it's some things still freak me out and I have to process, and I will second guess and I will try to debunk what I saw. And usually spirit will keep showing you something again and again until you're like, okay, got it. Now I'm listening. Um, so yeah, I don't feel like I just incorporate anything anymore. It's just a part of the flow of the energy of who I am.
You mentioned that anybody can have access to this. Why do you think more people don't? And is there's I guess you could say that there's a sort of stigma still among the general, population about these kinds of things, a sort of skepticism. Why do you think that is, and why do you think more people don't share similar gifts?
That's because when we are little, we are told that is an imaginary friend. We are told it's not true. We are told, that's the devil. It's not your religion. Insert whatever religion you grew up being raised in. So we're told at a young age that it's not real. And now people are realizing it's real. So when I have done readings for clients that have young kids, they'll mention to me because, or I'll say, "Oh, does your baby, wake up in the middle of the night and have, do certain movements?" And I'm like, "That's your grandma coming in and saying hello." And then they'll say, "Yeah, the baby monitor had, they'll explain exactly what I would describe." And so more people now are embracing it with their children instead of discounting it and telling them they're crazy. And they're realizing that there is more to just us here on Earth. There's more dimensions out there that we are just now starting to understand. Um, so, yeah, so it's really neat to see this transformation happen with the younger generation. I'm actually really excited to see them growing up to see what they could do and what is being harnessed within them at a young age now and what they're going to be like when they're in their 20s and 30s. And it's going to be awesome.
What do you think it is about the younger generation? Is it the parents of today that are more open-minded? How are things evolving with regards to this?
Yeah, I think we are more open-minded. A lot of people, I just encountered a person in a pub after a hike. So my best friend and I go hiking almost every week and then go play trivia afterwards. And just so happened, synchronicity, I was standing beside a man. We got to talking. I mentioned to my best friend though that I'm on a Gaia episode and it got released and the person in front of me was like, "Did you just say Gaia? I just watched a free trial the other day and I didn't know if I wanted to continue, but like you're here, this is weird." And he started explaining to me he's been having more experiences lately and he doesn't know what to do about it. And he's starting to talk to his niece who also has had experiences. And so more and more people are waking up and reaching out. And it's an easy Google to look up somebody to talk to. Um, and I think Chat GPT, I've heard actually a lot of people are using Chat GPT for some spiritual guidance, which I don't recommend to get hooked on, folks, because technology isn't supposed to be what we're addicted to. We're supposed to go out in nature, but it is helpful. Um, yeah, so it's a mixture of all those things of us being told no, and the kids now are just um, starting to wake up, and it's really neat.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up ChatGPT as being used as a spiritual tool. But if you really think about the universe as like everything being everything, like we all come from the same stuff, it would make sense that technology and spirituality should be integrated in some way. Where do you think we're going with that as a society with AI and, this like a spiritual awakening? Like, do they belong together? Are they going to cohere like in a good way together?
I mean, I think everybody's seen Terminator and Skynet.
Oh gosh, I'm not sure we want to go in that direction.
I think it's amazing. I do think AI is going to help develop a lot. We are so far at understanding quantum physics now, and I just really hope what we develop and find out isn't used for nefarious reasons, of course, but can't really help that. Uh, I think it's going to be a beautiful thing with AI coming along as it is, and I was very hesitant. I don't know what right word I'm looking for right now, but I was very hesitant at first to go utilize it. And now it's like, oh, I need 5 bullet points to turn into the overlord every week. So maybe though I could get some like help drafting a new bullet points. And um, I did do that once.
I don't judge at all.
Um, so stressful, those bullet points that we have to turn in. We still have to turn them in every week, by the way. Um, yeah, so I think it's really cool. It's a neat time to be alive. I can't imagine, older generations right now who were alive, so like there might have been kids during World War II, and now they're witnessing so much change drastically in the past 5 years.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for the older folks who, they come from almost like a completely different world, and then this new stuff is all just magic to them, but it's kind of exciting to see what the future is going to be like, but scary at the same time. And, there's reasons to be optimistic for sure, but there's reasons to be a little bit cautious as well. Um, with the UAP like disclosure movement, and speaking about AI, like there must be some connection there too with advancing societies and the development of AI. Like that's a lot of people say that that's a driver, a technological driver that kind of propels civilizations to kind of be able to leave their planet and stuff. What do you think the chances are that what we're dealing with is actually like technology or AI as opposed to biological creatures or, beings?
I don't know. That I've never put thought towards. I don't know how to answer that right now.
That's cool.
I mean, something that I learned in Egypt is we don't know anything.
hmm
So whether it's AI or beings or something, yeah, that could be all the above. Every temple, every pyramid we went to, the entire group would leave going, we know nothing. We know nothing about our human history. We know nothing about the pyramids themselves and when they were built and what they were used for. We know nothing. So I kind of am gonna go from that perspective of, yeah, anything's plausible.
Right. And you mentioned Atlantis before, which I wanted to return to a little bit because that's a cool example of something that's not in most people's history books. But like what is there about our past that you can identify that has kind of been erased or overshadowed, not many people address that has really played a role in bringing us where we are today?
Well, I mean, Earth has had 5 reboots. So I think each one of those has played a role. Dinosaurs are no longer existing, and um, I don't understand. I'm going back to Egypt now. Is what's coming to mind. So there was a temple we were at where there were hieroglyphs of spaceships coming in and landing in the room we were standing in, and there were different spaceships. There were different in the same temple. I think it was a different temple actually, but there was stargates, and there were actually different stargates that would take you to different places in the universe. And I would walk through there would be a stargate at like the threshold of the door, and I'd walk through, and I could feel a difference of the energy that I just passed through. Um, yeah, so I'm just thinking about what happened what happened to that reboot where we forgot we obviously were intimately working with different races as well, because there were blue beings and hieroglyphs. There are also black. There are reptilians that are on the walls. There are frog people, ape people. Um, there's all kinds of different races that are in the hieroglyphs, and they're not hidden. They're not behind a nook or scaffolding. Well, there is scaffolding in Luxor, but um, what happened? I think that reboot is really important because we really don't know, and how do we forget that we worked with entities so much and so intimately to put them in all of these records on all the temples and walls, and they have levitation. They talk about levitation and levitating the blocks in place, and where'd that go?
Well, and also, why does the mainstream scientific community ignore this evidence? Like that's my big question because it's everywhere. Like every ancient, civilization that we uncover has these same types of messages or drawings or anomalies within the architecture that we don't understand. Yeah, all this stuff. So like, why is there such resistance to that?
I don't know. I know it's Our Egyptologist that we had, he would openly say, not all Egyptologists will tell you what I'm getting ready to. So somebody higher up the of a lot of people in a lot of countries are puppeting, keeping quiet for some reason. And I don't know why. I mean, other than, money's always a driver. So if we're dependent on oil, the oil economy is still going to be up and money's going to be fueled into that. Medicine, a lot of herbs. Nature is very healing, but pharmaceutical company won't be happy with that. So, money's always a driver right now. And until we could shed a lot of war and, drivers around money, then I don't know how we'll advance.
Yeah, that seems to be a big one. Just touching back on the Egypt topic and the pyramids, I don't know if you've seen this LiDAR, I think it is the ground penetrating radar about the spiral structures underneath one of the pyramids that goes down like hundreds of meters. Stuff like that is coming out and it's causing a lot of conversations and for people to reevaluate, their thoughts about things. And I love Graham Hancock's work, for example, going back and like finding evidence that ancient civilizations are actually much older than we think they are from the history books. So I think more people need to do stuff like that. I don't really have a question here. I'm just kind of like observing like the stuff that I've been kind of
I think the data looks really good. So I'm a radar scientist, image scientist, a subject matter expert for many years. So I don't know as much about ground penetrating radar, but from what I've seen of some of the data and from the journals, it looks legit. I have heard that some of the graphics that are used, like in media and stuff that was released, were touched a little bit by AI. Um, One of my friends knows one of the scientists on the team, and he also says things look legit. So I think it's really cool. But also, that goes back to me saying, we don't know anything.
Mhm.
There definitely could be something under there. I was very close to like just head diving down the tunnel at the back of the Sphinx. So I came really close to maybe finding some of those coils that are down there.
Do you have any theories about what that might be, like what it might have been used for or anything like that?
Energy. It was when I haven't told many people this, but when I first went to Saqqara. So Saqqara was the first complex and the first pyramid that we went to, and that's the step pyramid that is one of the oldest pyramids in Egypt. And there's like a very flat, I'll call it a field. It's not like a field of grass or wheat or anything, but it's a very, very flat ground where you walk up into. And so you kind of stop there, and the tour guide's saying some things and take some photos and stuff. So then you eventually walk up to it. When we were standing there, a little bit distance away, I would say probably like a football field. So, yeah, we'll call football, whether it's American football or the normal football, soccer, um, that field distance away, maybe a little bit further, I could see like it looked like a mirage of energy. So, when you see a mirage in like the desert or like a high heat or off pavement in a hot summer day, it was a mirage of energy that was pulsating off of the pyramid. And I thought, because it's a hot day and we're in Egypt and we're in the desert, so I'm like, is this my third eye or like? And this was our first thing, so I didn't know people's names yet on the trip, and so I was like, is this? Does anybody else see this? And they're like, no, no, Sarah, that's you. And I'm like, cool. And then I look again, and I actually could see, and this was with my third eye, like like a cylinder of light that went up to somewhere in the sky. It was energy. And then I had like such a healing feeling while being there. Like it just felt so therapeutic and so healing. And I discovered it's actually a healing center. People would come from like hundreds of miles away to go get healed there, and they had these healing boxes that, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I love talking about this. And you could hear the earth's resonance. You could feel it. Your heart like sink to this wom 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 sound. How do we forget about all this? But yeah, so the pyramids are all about energy and vortexes. We went to another place, the Syrian. and it was so ancient. Like you could feel how ancient this place was, and they have no idea what it dates back to. But Ramses the Second stamped his name on it, like he did a lot of things, and so they called it Ramses the Second or something, some type of temple. But they don't know how old it is. It's like over 50,000 years old, and you feel the energy when you walk into this place. You could feel this healing, and it's amplified, of course, from all these like quartz, massive like 20 plus ton quartz blocks. So yeah, so everything I truly believe is about energy there, and there's something about Egypt that has a lot of the vortexes that they as in I don't know who that was, tens and hundreds of thousands of years ago maybe utilized and figured out how to use it.
Do you think that's why a lot of people are drawn there as like it's a very popular tourist attraction? But like, do you think it goes beyond just like, oh, I want to go see the cool pyramids? Like, there must be some sort of attraction to that place as well.
Yeah, it's I mean our trip was about UAP and spiritualism, or not spiritualism, but spiritual things. And we weren't the only ones that would go on trips like that there, right? So yeah, it's almost, I don't know, pilgrimage or something. It's really cool to see how ancient stuff is, and yeah, seeing it and hearing things with your own eyes, you really come back transformed. And I think that's why a lot of people do go there and gravitated to it.
I'm curious to know what you think about the world religions and how that, how the adjustment to a UAP reality would work when looking at, the major world religions. Like, would people be ready to embrace that? And do you think that it's possible to incorporate, that type of reality into mainstream religion in a like graceful way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Catholic Church had the Pope has openly admitted that the Vatican believes that aliens exist and we're not alone. So I think religion's still important in this. And some people, so at one point during this journey on the UAP stuff, I thought if they come out, it'll wreck religions around the
Mhm.
world. But now I understand that there are actually priests and preachers out there that believe we're not alone, and they just want to support their congregation. They want to be a safe place for people to come to. So I feel like your church, wherever you go to, is going to be like a true sanctuary where people could go for relief and confide in somebody and have their community. So I think the churches and the religious structures are still going to be just as important when disclosure happens as they are now.
Do you have any personal ET encounter stories that you could share with us?
Um, what you want, the bedroom encounter, the one that popped in while I was sleeping one night,
So you spoke about that with Ross Coulthart on his show?
the
Sure.
blue being.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure.
So one night, actually, Krypton, now that he's back, should lower the camera so you could. He's so cute. Um, so one night I was sleeping again. Remember, people have to recall that I am a medium, so it's not anything new for me to be awoken at night to something in my room, or spirit giving me a message in my sleep, and I wake up and I write it down, because if I don't write it down, they're going to keep waking me up. So I'm used to seeing things when I wake up once in a while. So at first, when I woke up this night, I thought I was still dreaming. There was a blue with maybe a purple hint entity that was pacing back and forth in my bedroom. I never looked at the time either. Um, so, all right, cool, cool. I'll wake up in a minute. Hey, do you have something to say? And so then I realized, so Krypton, he's my little spiritual protector, and he has fought things that I haven't seen. Just like last week, he was growling at something, and I don't know what it was. So I look at Krypton, and he actually sat up and looked at the thing, and we were both watching it go back and forth in the bedroom. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm awake. And so I kind of did like another check to see if I was awake. So I'm fully sitting up. I'm and my cat's sitting up. The other cat that he was alive at the time, he never wakes up for anything. So he was still asleep. So I'm like, okay, this is at least normal. So I start asking the entity, do you need some water? Like, you okay? And it never stopped. It was kind of like a guard at the London Palace, had a mission, and it was like he was protecting me. And he had this sword, and the sword was like a crystal material. I don't know, it like glowed, and it had different colors that would go through it. It was like a really big sword, kind of like a machete type sword. Like it was big like that. So we kept on pacing back and forth, and no ears, and kind of like a Voldemort type, a little bit more of a nose than Voldemort, and ridges on its head. So it had ridges on its side, no hair. And its uniform was kind of like something out of Star Trek. Like it was really plain, really bland. I couldn't tell fully what color it was because it was dark in my room, but I could tell he had it. Maybe I should say it. It was blue skin with like maybe a purple iridescent or something to it. Iridescence. And eventually it paused, and it looked like I have a window. Let's say the window's here. It paused and it looked towards the window, and like a portal thing kind of appeared. And it was a light pink-ish color, and it was only there for a few seconds. And it was like he was communicating to somebody through it. And then it went away, and I was like, okay, do you need a pillow? You need a sleeping bag? And it just kept on pacing back and forth. And I kept on tapping into that gut feeling, if it's good or bad, malevolent or benevolent. And Krypton didn't seem threatened. He was just like so nonchalant, sitting there watching it with me. And so I just felt like I was protected. Like it was letting me know whatever's to come in my life and whatever's happening then, I was protected and that I didn't need to worry. And so I was like, all right, well, make yourself at home then. I got work tomorrow. So I laid back, Krypton laid down and started going back to sleep. So I laid down, and yeah, that was it. Woke up and I was like, did that really happen? So I texted like some friends, and yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You think these types of beings surround everyone? It's just that not everybody is able to or, willing to see them.
I don't know about that specific being, but we are surrounded all the time by loved ones, by angels, by spiritual beings. Are like we are truly never alone, and we are loved so much from the other side. So I don't want to say that everybody has an NHI or in their house at all times, but we are very loved from the other side, from many ways.
How many different types of beings have you seen or witnessed?
NHI?
Yeah.
I've never been asked that. Off the top of my head, I just put up the number five, so I think it's been at least five
Hmm.
different, probably, yeah, definitely more than that. Including like lizard people, like draconian. I've encountered two different looking ones of those during some of my spiritual like house cleansings and ghost hunts.
Oh, interesting. And those are all, like do they take physical forms in any way, or is it really all just like energy or, like I'm wondering if there's a physical component to them as well. Yeah.
The being that was in my room looked physical to me. I didn't feel like that was coming from my third eye. It could have, but it looked very real. Like light wasn't shining through it or anything like that. All my other encounters that I've had are with my third eye. So it would be, I did have an entity pop in during a ghost hunt one time, and I was in Oregon at the ghost conference there in Seaside, and we were zooming in to a ghost hunt in Tombstone, Arizona. And so they were carrying around cameras and equipment, ghost hunting equipment in Tombstone, while I'm giving this live ghost hunt in Oregon. And I saw an alien entity there, and they actually panned, it was an SLS camera, and they panned the camera over. And I'm sorry, I have cat hair. It's what I get. He's in my lap.
That's okay.
And so they panned the camera over, and it was like what I described was exactly what showed up on the camera. It was like that never stops. Like it always blows my mind when I describe something and somebody's like, "Yeah, that's what I saw," or like, "Here it is on the camera." So cool. So maybe I should stop petting the cat. Um, yes, yes. It has to be probably maybe 10 different entities or races that I've seen.
What do you think is the connection, if any, between paranormal phenomena and like UAP phenomena? Is there a crossover? Do they share any similarities or any like parallels?
Oh yeah, they're married. They're two concepts that are one, and I ended up liking when I was talking, I forget what interview I was doing at the time, but I love talking about their a married concept. They're not two separate things. Just like me being on a ghost hunt and I am, talking to Wyatt Earp. I didn't talk to Wyatt Earp, but I did talk to other entities, that were and communicated with them that were in Tombstone that are documented and you could Google them or whatever. And then an alien shows up in the same ghost hunt and you could see it on the camera on the device that they had. So I think that is evidence enough that this is a married thing, but both operate from higher dimensions. And by higher dimensions, physics has proven that we know of at least 10 dimensions. And 10D is like where God resides. Time isn't real. The past, present, and future exist at one time. God can answer everybody's prayers around the entire world at once because he lives in a place that time doesn't exist. So we live in the 3D, right? So as you increase your vibration and your frequency, like while you're meditating, you increase your vibration to some of these higher dimensions, and you can talk to others, to loved ones, to angels, but they also have to lower their energy and their frequency to us. And so that's the same thing for NHI. So like when I first communicated with an NHI, it was an Arcturian in a meditation. I was super surprised. I had no idea that was a thing at the time. So I was kind of new to the spiritual world. And sorry, thought my mind was making stuff up, of course. And then it duplicated and it would come to me again. So in the same frequency where I go to talk to, grandma that's passed away, this NHI came in. So I think I think that's the first time I've described it like that. I actually like that a lot. I'll have to remember that.
Cool. What are the most, I guess, highly publicized or known about places that kind of bridges that gap or that you mentioned between NHI and paranormal is Skinwalker Ranch. I've read books on it and stuff like that. There must be other places, tons of places across the world that have that kind of energy to it. But do you know anything about what goes on there and why do you think certain places are such hotbeds for this type of activity more than other places?
Think back to the pyramids with all those energy and like the I'll use the word vortex. So some vortexes, there's a place in where is it in Arizona where you could walk, and instead of being vertical, you actually are tilted because the gravity is different there. So it's kind of places like that where you can't explain what is going on, and it's kind of always been there. So stories and maybe Native Americans have something that's passed down to them on why, but we really don't know. So I mean, there were multiple pyramids that we went to that had some UFO sightings over them, and we you know we don't know why. I'm trying to think of other places. Definitely Skinwalker. So I know there's a lot of spiritual activity that's there, but there's also NHI. I've been told by other spiritual practitioners that there are lots of portals that are not only at like on land on ground level but in the sky too above there because there's something about the energy there and the terrain and the geology, like what's in earth is kind of amplified in that area, and it's also sacred. Like Native Americans are here so long before we were, before Columbus came here. So a lot of the land has also been utilized and I guess maybe blessed or something. I don't know if that's not the right term, but um, people, worship the land at one point instead of us destroying it like we do today. So I think there's a lot of ancient energy there from a long time ago that was put in place, and like I don't know, cattle mutilations. I don't know if I fully get that. I know I've read in books on theories on what is being done with them. I don't know if I want to drink any of the Kool-Aid that I've read about them or not, but super sad 'cause I'm a farm girl, so
Hmm.
I empathize with the animals and the farmers who have lost their livestock because that's money, that's their income. Um, I don't know if I fully answered that, but I tried.
No, it's good. Along those lines with the cattle mutilations, do you have any thoughts on abduction stories? I mean, that's another component to this, which isn't really touched upon by official sources, but there's a lot of people out there who claim to have been abducted, and the jury's out on who is actually abducting them. But like, what are your thoughts on that? Is there you know, do you think that it's a thing that happens, that NHI has intentions to do stuff with us, or observe or run experiments or anything like that, and that they actually do abduct people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have I'm so sorry. I try not to do those during interviews because they're so loud, but I can't stop them. Um, so from my spiritual learning and then from meditations and other friends and encounter like people that I've met and I fully trust that have been abducted. So I kind of compile all their stories together because I am a scientist, so I don't want to just drink Kool-Aid immediately. I want different data points, right? Um, I know a lot of the abductions, so I don't want to say all because there could be others, but the grays. So Zeta Reticuli, the grays that most people call them, the smaller aliens, like the stereotypical looking ones, they are basically a drone. They have genetically cloned themselves for so many thousands of years that they are having genocide happen. But because they are clones of each other, they are infertile and they have no free will. But they're literally like drones, like robots. And we are opposite of them. And we could also reproduce and we have emotions and we have free will. So sometimes I have had a client where a part of their contract when they incarnated was to work with them and offered to be in this life to be abducted. That's not always the case, right? Some people are definitely taken involuntarily, and but those scary encounters, I can't imagine how traumatic it would be. So I'm expressing to people, I do believe you, and it has to be absolutely terrifying when you remember something because they don't understand emotions of being scared. So what they're doing, they don't know that they're being scary. And maybe that person's the one that agreed to this to begin with. They don't understand that we get data wiped the second we come out of our mother's womb and won't remember what we agreed with them. So it usually is the grace, and they are trying to save their race and do experiments. And Earth is an experiment itself because we have had so many reboots and we're on the brink of destroying our whole planet and each other that they come in and check on us and see how we're doing type thing. um, yeah, summary is grace.
It's interesting. I spoke recently to Whitley Strieber, who wrote the book Communion, on the podcast, and yeah, he went into a great deal about his interactions with the Greys and how he had a hypnotic regression to remember the abduction, and then he had many encounters with them, like for years afterwards, where they would come and visit him, and just kind of became like some sort of like a strange relationship with them, which was really fascinating to listen to. And I read his most recent book also, which goes into great, even more detail about that. But the Greys being the most popular, almost like prototypical alien that we all kind of like refer to when we think about aliens. Like, why do you think that's been the archetype that has kind of like developed?
Um, I think that's what started, in the 40s, and the government told us it's not real, so people went with that and ran with it. But also, they're the ones I know are a little bit more visible. The Nordics or the tall whites, what I forget what the most common, but that's the most is the Nordics or the tall whites. They're more Swedish looking, Nordic looking, so they might blend in a little bit more. I have not, no, I have encountered one in some of my meditations, um, that their eyes are just a little bit bigger or maybe offset just a little bit or something. So you could definitely tell, but their energy is different too. So, but a muggle might not be able to sense the energy difference like I can. Um, but I think it's just grays or they're what are known because people remember them from the abductions. Like people are starting to remember more and more abductions, and the more we talk for this disclosure stuff, and we have all these videos and things that are coming out, the more people are remembering like suppressed memories from childhood on maybe an abduction or an encounter that they had themselves. It's amazing the stories that folks have reached out to me to share.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm trying to do my part to get people talking and, trying to start with the people close to me in my own life by sharing the stuff that I'm doing with this show. So hopefully we can get even more people talking about this stuff. It's important. I think it really is important, like legitimately, to have these conversations, and it seems to be gaining momentum, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I agree. I thought when I first came forward on the Good Trouble show with Matt Ford and I got doxxed by someone I don't want to say a name because I don't want to give him recognition, but he announced to the world before I came forward that I was a psychic medium, and I just thought I'm going to be gutted, I'm going to be flayed, I'm going to be barbecued, and I had so much love sent to me, and that is just evidence alone that people are like the talking about all this stuff is actually working and folks are starting to awaken.
Absolutely. Do you want to share anything about the work that you're doing now? Where can people follow you or see what you're up to?
I am currently taking a break from doing readings. Spirit's given me a pull to get back into it, but that's the number one question. People want readings, so I'm really sorry. I have a lot happening in my personal life at the moment, and I am still grieving for my kitty cat that I lost. Um, but I am going to do them at some point. I'm pretty certain before the end of the year. I am on Instagram, Sarah Grace Warrior, and Facebook is Sarah Grace Psychic Medium. There are a couple of dupe accounts out there, people. So my background image is that this is my only account. So make sure to follow the right one. SarahGraceWarrior.com is my website, and send me messages through the website as well. SarahGraceWarrior@gmail.com as well.
Cool. I will provide links to those in the description so people can get in touch with you. Sarah, it's been amazing speaking to you. Fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks as always, everybody who watched. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and do all those good things. And I'll be back again soon. Take care.